So for the viewers, for context here about how strong this guy is, I have his numbers here. In the 275-pound weight class, his numbers that he put up was 705 pounds on the squat, 535 pounds on the bench, and 635 pounds on the deadlift. Total of 1840 pounds. So if you guys want to do your calculations and think about how many 45 plates are in each side, do your math, but that is crazy strong. And then you put them on kettlebells. I'm assuming a 48 kg kettlebell feels like a pencil. Welcome to the Movement Hub podcast. I am your host, Manny.
I'm your host, Josh.
And today we have a very special guest, an absolute unit, probably the strongest guy that we're going to have on this podcast, aside from Josh. Josh is blown out of the water now.
Wow,
so,
yeah. Wow.
This guy, very knowledgeable. Like I said, absolute unit. He is a board certified clinical nutritionist, certified chiropractic sports physician. He has a CSCS, which is a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and also is an active release technique provider since 1995, which is the year after I was born. And nobody else but Dr. Michael Hartle. What's going on, Doc?
Hey, good morning, guys. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. Squeeze us in your schedule. Did we miss anything in your intro? Anything else that we left out for you?
I'm finishing up my third year of getting my exercise science PhD. So I was bored, so I wanted to do something else. So I added that to my thing. So I've always wanted to do that. So
As soon as you think he had it all, he had to just go back and get more.
When does it
Crazy.
stop?
well, I became an empty nester, so I figured, hey, what the heck, let's go ahead and do that. And I've always wanted to get my PhD, so I'll be a double doctor.
Double doctor.
So does that mean like you put like 2 DR in front of your name now, or?
Well, one of my patients suggested that. I said, well, you can call me Doctor or Dr. Squares since I love math, so we can do that. So,
And we'll get into math in a little bit. But for everybody that's unaware, I have been introduced to Doc for quite some time now. And we originated with the SFL, and it was in New York City. And Manny did the SFL years after when I did it. So let's run it back. You and Pavel created the SFL. How far back before that did it go? And how can you talk to us about the origins of the SFL? And for those that are unaware, the SFL is the StrongFirst lifter. And Doc is a master SFG and a chief SFL, from my understanding.
yes, a couple of things real quick. StrongFirst, we teach body weight, barbell, kettlebell exercises around the world. We do that. The SFL is the StrongFirst lifter, the barbell certification. I think sometime around Thanksgiving of 2012, Pavel was generating and creating StrongFirst. And so his own organization there. And he called me and said, hey, Doc, I want to put on a barbell certification. Would you be interested in writing the curriculum with me? And so I said, sure. So we spent about 6 months after that, back and forth, lots of emails, phone calls, going back and forth, kind of refining what we did. And then in June of 2013, we held the first SFL in Vicenza, Italy. Fabio hosted us over there, so we did that. So we've done that now for going on 11 years, over 11 years now. So it's been doing very well. We did not just have me teaching the SFL. We got Fabio, we got Sean Carnes, Jason Marshall, Jeremy Laport. They also are other masters that teach it, but those are ones who we've taught them how to do that. So now they're doing that well. So I'm no longer the chief SFL. There was an organization where we created the chief SFB, chief SFG, chief SFL for about a couple of years, and then we just did away with those positions there. So I'm the former chief SFL, but still I'm heavily involved. We just put out the newest edition of the SFL manual at the beginning of this year, so the newest edition is out there. I'm sure, Josh, you're familiar with the SFG. I think I'm teaching the SFG. I'm in Tampa, Florida right now. This is why I'm in an Airbnb. We actually are teaching the 35th edition of the SFG manual. So it goes back to when Pablo started teaching kettlebells back in 2001. I think I can't remember which edition we're at the SFL now, but it doesn't need as much refinement every year as the SFG. But again, the barbell is an amazing certification. It's one of my favorite things to teach.
So, Doc, what would you say is the biggest difference from SFL, SFG, and SFB compared to all the other certifications that you can find out there? It almost seems like every provider out there is teaching a different form, but the same base of all these movements and exercises that you teach in all your courses. So, how does StrongFirst stand out above all of these other courses out there?
Well, like for example, this coming weekend, we're going to be teaching six movements in 3 days. That's like, what are we going to be spending all that time on? But it's one of the reasons why I got involved with Pablo, because he's very heavily involved into technique. And so I'm a big technique person. When my kids first started using barbells, I actually went to Lowe's and got some dowel rods, and they had to lift the dowel rods as far as squat and bench and do it perfectly before we even started going to a barbell and putting weight on. So same thing with Pablo. He's very technique driven. And so that's really attracted me to him. So we call it an inch wide and a mile deep. So you go to some other kettlebell classes or workshops, you learn 26 different moves. And we teach only 6. In the barbell, we teach only 7. But when you learn those basics, I'm sure Josh, you guys can reiterate what I say here. With the people who learn the basics the best, those are the people who are going to be the best athletes. So whether you're a football player, a soccer player, lacrosse, a swimmer, whatever else, the more you learn, you are adept at doing the basics, the better athlete you'll be.
Were there any concepts early on in the early days of StrongFirst and the SFL that we sort of had a little addition by subtraction, a little concepts or movements that we sort of like, maybe we should spend less time on this and more time on other things?
The barbell, not so much. The one thing we did, so at the very first certification in June of 2013, we actually had not only the 1 rep bench press test, which is part of the testing, but we had a 5 rep bench press test, and we also had a front squat test. And so it was right after that cert that Paul and I kind of looked at each other. Let's nix the front squat test, and then let's nix the 5 reps bench press test. And so now we have the test that we do. And the reason we have the test is that not only do you have to talk the talk, but you have to walk the walk. And, and obviously we have situations where you might have a high level national lifter, or let's say a former special ops team member or something like that, who has an injury, they can't do certain moves. That's not a problem. We can go ahead and possibly look at, maybe negating that test or whatever. So it's not a problem with that. But again, we have those tests both in the kettlebell, body weight, and barbell that we utilize to basically walk to walk, talk to talk.
Out of all these different certifications, which do you think is the most humbling for the people who is taking these courses out of the 3, SFG, SFB, and SFL?
And can you tell us how many times you took the 5-minute snatch test?
That killed me. That killed me when I took it.
To be honest with you, it's different for each person. So if you're a bigger guy or woman, taking the barbell can sometimes be humbling, because the weights that we decide what you're going to lift is a body weight ratio. So for example, in the bench press, it's for men who are under 50, it's 1.25 times your body weight. Okay. And so we had a former master in our organization who took the first US SFL in Tucson, Arizona, and he had to do like 315, 320 for his 1 rep bench. Okay. Which he couldn't do at that time. So what he did is he spent the next 3 months, he lost 30 pounds, and he decreased the weight he had to do, and he actually passed it. So for bigger guys and girls, the SFL can sometimes be daunting. But just go through it and do it. Kettlebell thing, as you guys know, it's about your strength endurance. We have that beautiful 300-second test at the end of the cert called the snatch test. And it's funny because people will tend to get very anxious and develop anxiety and neuroses and everything else regarding those only 5 minutes, but yet they have all day Friday, all day Saturday, and most of Sunday learning other movements. And I always tell it's only 5 minutes of your life to do that. But to do 100 reps at a certain weight is definitely very daunting. I'm sure both of you guys have done that. So back to your question, Josh, I've done the snatch test twice in my life.
I remember you told me that. I'm like, twice. Wow, I remember doing it like 20 times. Just getting
Well,
ready
okay.
to.
Well, so first time, so when I went through Pablo's original organization, the tests were different. I had to do 74 reps with the 24 kilo. You could not stop, you could not set the bell down, and you were allowed one hand switch. So you had to, so I did 37 and 37. Okay. The next time we did it, we reconfigured it. So now it's the 5 minute, 100 rep test. You can set it down as many times as you want, as long as you get done in 5 minutes. So there's a difference there. And so Mark Rifkin, who's a former master in the organization, he said, he's a former powerlifter too. He said, "Hey Doc, why don't you create like a powerlifting kind of type program for the snatch test?" So what I did was I did 5 sets of 20 reps. For those who don't know, I used to compete in powerlifting for 20 years. So I kind of did that mentality, even though I've never done a 20 rep bench or squat or deadlift kind of thing. Um, but I did, 20 reps, set the bell down, wait to the top of the minute and do it again. So usually I got myself timed that it took me about 40 seconds to do 20 reps. And then I'd set it down. I have 20 seconds of rest. And I remember when I got done with the 80th rep, I set it down. People were freaking out like, "You only got a minute 20 left. You got to get it finished." I'm just like, just let me do my thing. And I started up and I finished right at 441. And I was a little out of gas, but not that much out of air. So, but I've done many other, I've never done a full snatch test since then, but I've done 2 minute snatch tests, 3 minute, 4 minutes in my gym. So I've done a lot of training with that. But one of the benefits of being promoted in leadership is that we didn't have to do it again. So
One and
Yeah,
done.
upper management definitely helps.
Right.
Just wanted to plug in. You're in Tampa right now doing a StrongFirst. I just want to plug in that you're doing an SFL in Nashville coming up, and you have one in New York City for those in our area that are getting ready. Can you tell us when that is?
December in Nashville this year. I don't have the calendar right in front of me, but it's the second weekend in December. June is the first weekend in June next year. In addition, we just posted we're going to be putting on some barbell workshops at 5 Points Academy on Lafayette in November 2nd this year.
On November 2nd. Got
So
it.
those are workshops, just 4 hour workshops, very easy. There's no testing or anything else. People just come to expand their cerebral muscle.
Very nice. Can you tell us about how you got started in the barbell? From my understanding, you were with barbells first before you got introduced to kettlebells. So how did that start, and when did you eventually jump into the kettlebell world?
When I was in high school, I went to a small Catholic high school in Richfield, Minnesota. There was a guy who came to our weight room. Our weight room was about the size of your bedroom. That's how big our weight room was. So, but he came and gave some. He was a bodybuilder, power lifter, really strong looking guy, and I was just amazed at what he was able to do at the weights. I mean, he took like 315 and just squatted like it was butter. I mean, it was just so easy for him. And so that summer, I joined a gym after I graduated from high school, and there were 3 powerlifters in that gym. And so my friends went away to college that fall. I stayed at the University of Minnesota and I started training as a powerlifter. And so that's kind of how I got involved with powerlifting and the barbell. It just amazed me to look at a bar that had, 5, 6, 7, 8 plates on it, and then I could actually move that bar and put it back in. And so I was in engineering at the time, and I had a tough calculus test coming up. And I thought, if I can do, at that time, I think with 475 for a double, there's no way. I mean, there's no problem I can pass this test. And so it gave me a lot of more self-confidence. I was more of an introverted kid in high school. So it kind of brought me out of my shell with that. And then when in 2005, I did my last powerlifting meet. So I kind of retired from that. And in 2006, I went to my first kettlebell certification with Pablo in St. Paul, Minnesota.
So
And
for the
so
viewers, for context here about how strong this guy is, I have his numbers here. In the 275-pound weight class, his numbers that he put up was 705 pounds on the squat, 535 pounds on the bench, and 635 pounds on the deadlift. Total of 1840 pounds. So if you guys want to do your calculations and think about how many 45 plates are in each side, do your math, but that is crazy strong. And then you put them on kettlebells. I'm assuming a 48 kg kettlebell feels like a pencil.
Well, it's funny because at the certification, Pablo kept coming up to me. He said, "Doc, use a heavier kettlebell." So, because my test weight was a 24 kilo. So doing a double kettlebell front squat is only 106 pounds
Yeah.
with 24 in each hand. So I'm like, a year earlier, I just squatted 700. So the weight wasn't a problem, and the technique wasn't a problem, but it was just learning different movements there. So that was actually what I had to work with.
You had mentioned, following your Instagram, you made a post, this is way back when one of your influences was Louie Simmons. And, I wanted to discuss that you had phone conversations, with the late Louie Simmons. What was that like? Cause you had mentioned in your post that that it influenced the way you train, the way you lifted. And then like, I don't know if it help you with clients of yours or other athletes, other lifting athletes of yours?
Well, Louis I've never met him personally. We only talked on the phone, even though he was only about 3 hours from me. Lives in Columbus, Ohio. Um, but his West Side system, I was always a drug-free athlete. Never took any steroids. I know a lot of his guys took the extra B vitamins, and stuff like that. But I wanted to call him because my analytical brain was thinking, well, there's got to be a way that I could take his system and make it for more of a drug-free athlete, and something that I could do so I wouldn't rip my body to shreds trying to do the training. And so we did some talking about it. And so he actually helped out figure out a lot of things. And a lot of things he made sense because being from an engineering background, I have a lot of math, a lot of physics in my background. So thinking about how things work and how the body works, even though we are living tissue, the laws of physics still apply to our bodies. And so when I took my weak points of my lifting and I made those weak points stronger, my overall lifting got stronger. Okay. So obviously, if you hit your weak point in a lift, if you are not strong enough to go through that, that's where you fail that lift. That's where you need to have help with the bench or spotting in a squat or something like that. And so he helped figure a lot of that stuff out. So I kind of modified my training around. It took about a year of experimentation to get it to where I want. And then after that, it just took off. So I always was strong, but then it got even stronger after that.
What are those methods? So I'm assuming based on all the powerlifters that I know, they normally just in terms of volume and strength of getting your numbers up on the squat, bench, and deadlift. What is a common denominator when it comes to the weak points that are leaking in their training when it comes to trying to get stronger in their discipline?
Well, one thing I see, and I'm going to go backwards a couple steps here. People need to become beginners first. Okay. If you've never done it, if your training age, as they like to say, that means how many years you've been training, is very small, you need to become basic, be good at your basics. So when I teach the SFL or the SFG, the barbell kettlebell certification, I always tell people before you start going into these, crazy, if you want to say it, specialized variety or assistance exercises, know how to squat first. So, for example, I had one of my patients who hurt himself doing pause deadlifts.
Mm.
And I said, how many years have you been doing deadlifting? Oh, about a year. And I said, okay, we'll get you fixed in the pause deadlifts, but I want you to go back to doing regular barbell deadlifts, no pauses, for at least a good year, year and a half. And then once you're familiar with that and your body's familiar with it, then you can add in some pause deadlifts. But again, people want to jump to the craziest stuff they see the big, huge, strong guys do, and they haven't paid enough time in doing the basic stuff first. Okay. So when you do the basic stuff, you get stronger. So back to the leaks there. So for example, with me in the bench press, I could get any weight off my chest, any weight. Okay. But I get about to the point where, and I'm going to use my Josh knows this reference, my humerus bone, which is your upper arm bone. That when it gets just above parallel is when I start getting weak. And so I would work that area. So with Louis' advice, I would use a lot of board presses. I would also do some floor presses. So we do I did my floor press different than what we teach at StrongFirst. I do my butt is on the ground. Okay, I don't lift my butt off the ground, but I would actually get in a rack, lay on my back, and someone would actually help lift it off. And I do a floor press where I bring the bar down to where my elbows touch the ground, and then I come right back up. And so I think I got up as high as 450 or 460 doing that with the bench. And that really took off my bench because I was able to, again, I'm stronger through the weak area, which means then I can push through it. So I'm strong here. I'm strong off my chest. So I had a little weak area. So I made that weak area stronger.
What do you think about like all these new specialty bars that have been coming out with like the Kabuki bar, the Transformer bar, all these other kind of machines? What are your thoughts on it? Do you think that we should revert back to the old ways where you just had a barbell and you work around that? Or do you think that these new specialty bars are something that's good and advantageous for our training?
So in my gym, I got like about 8 different 45-pound or 20-kilo bars, normal standard bars. I do have and it used to be called, well, they still sell it, the Buffalo bar, which is a longer bar and it had a little curve and it was designed for the bigger guys. So I was in the 275-pound weight class, which is one of the bigger weight classes in powerlifting. And I never had any shoulder problems or anything else with that, but other guys would. So they would actually use the Buffalo bar for their, you want to call it preseason or before their competition programming starts to get to do the squatting. That's a good bar. I also use the safety squat bar a lot. And so the safety squat bar, Louie was a huge believer of that. A lot of other powerlifters were, so I use that quite a bit. Transformer bar, I don't know a whole lot about. I know Chris is what's his last name? Yes, Duffin. He created it. It looks like it could be a safety squat bar and a few other bars. So if it eliminates the use of having 6 different bars and is still functional, go ahead and use it. But the safety squat bar, what I did with that, so I kind of did a very highly specialized version of a good morning. So I was a sumo deadlifter, and those numbers you rattled off, that's why my deadlift is, I'm what they call a disadvantageous deadlifter. I'm not a very good deadlifter. It's like pull-ups are not my thing. Push-ups are my thing more than pull-ups are. But I use that to actually strengthen my deadlift tremendously. So it was actually a good bar.
Safe to say that there are no trap bars in your gym.
Wow, you just had to go there, didn't you?
I don't know. I asked if there was anything we should avoid. So
Yeah. So I know, like Mike Boyle talks about using trap bars and all that kind of stuff. The thing when someone does a trap bar deadlift, it's a half squat. It is not a deadlift.
right.
When you look at the traditional definition of a deadlift with a bar in front of your shins, and generally it's obviously a full body lift, but a lot of your posterior chain is being emphasized with that. The trap bar deadlift, your hands are to the side. You're basically just doing a half squat. But here's the thought process with this, and I've modified this a little bit from last time you and I talked about it. If that's what someone needs to do to get exercise, knock yourself out. I just don't like calling it a trap bar deadlift.
Got it.
Call it
So
a
we should
trap
call
bar
it.
half squat, or I don't know what it is, or trap bar lift. It's called a trap bar lift. Now, if you're doing farmer's walks with that, that's an okay use of the trap bar. Yes, so I have no problem with that because when you see World's Strongest Man, they usually got one in each hand. Each one is its own unit. This doesn't, it makes it all one unit, but that kind of stuff.
So for people who don't know as well, you write a lot of articles for StrongFirst, and I've read a few of them as well, and they're just so detailed. And for the person who doesn't know much about lifting, they can read an article and truly understand what you want them to understand. But out of all the articles that you wrote for StrongFirst, which one stands out the most for you, and which one do you think or wish that people would stumble upon?
Well, a couple. There's one. It seems to be that when I teach the barbell cert, everyone always brings up the Guinness chocolate chip cookie and the lifting that article. And the picture they put in there was pretty awesome. Guinness beer is one of my favorite beers. Chocolate chip cookies, I fell in love with that. My mom used to make really good chocolate chip cookies. But basically, that talks about being good at the basics. I think someone has said, I don't know who said this quote, but the difference between an average athlete and an elite athlete is that the elite athlete can do the basics that much better. So when you watch the Olympics and you saw Noah Lyles win the 100-meter dash, okay, he did a lot of training, but he focused on the basics. When you saw Gabby Thomas run the 200 meters and win that, basics. She's that much better at the basics than say either of three of us are. Okay, so again, learning the basics there with that. I also wrote an article regarding the triceps and the deadlift. And that was interesting because people are like, what? Why triceps? Because you don't use your triceps in the deadlift. Well, if you're using your body, since it's a whole body lift, if you're lifting properly, your triceps are heavily involved, especially you have triceps, which means you have three heads to it. You have what they call a long head of the triceps, which goes past the shoulder joint and attaches to above the shoulder joint there. So it's intimately involved with latissimus dorsi, which is one of the muscles strongly involved as far as in the deadlift. So again, that's one of that. Let's see. I wrote an article about pausing in the bench press, because one of the things at the SFL is that when you do the bench press 1 rep test, the bar must come to a stop on your chest, and then it's not a touch and go. It's not a bounce. It's not a rib breaker, we like to call it. Okay. And so people don't necessarily know how to train the pause. So I wrote an article about how let's go beyond what you have to do. So my recommendation is train a 3 second pause, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and then push it up. Because then when you go to the 1 second pause, it's not a big deal.
So it's sort of like the powerlifting, like standards, where if you are in a meet, you do have to have a monetary pause before you get the lift command to come right up. I think do you feel that a lot of people should train in that way?
If you're not a power lifter and you're not going to the SFL, you don't necessarily have to train that way. But the one advantage of doing a pause, even a brief pause, is the fact that you decrease the momentum coming off your chest. Now, in the squat, since both lifts have a eccentric followed by a concentric motion there, in the squat, you can go down fast and come up fast. And when you do that, your butt's not hitting anything beyond that. Okay. But in the bench, the limiting factor is the bar stops in my chest. And you can't really break your sternum. It takes about 2,000 pounds of pressure per square inch to break your sternum, but your ribs can break very easily. And I've seen a number of athletes who the bar has fallen out of their hands in a powerlifting meet, and the spotters weren't quick enough to catch it, and it broke a couple ribs.
Right.
Kind of a painful end to the day. So, but the bench, so you want to at least stop that momentum. That's why when I teach the barbell bench press, I teach people pretend there's a raw egg on your chest. And when you come down, you want to just touch the raw egg and go back up. You don't want to crush the raw egg and have its innards all over your chest.
Very good. I will attest to the triceps on the deadlift thing, that this is one of the game changers that helped for me, is like trying to flex your tricep very hard before you get into the deadlift is an absolute game changer. And I think it's highly underutilized by a lot of lifters out there. So that's, if that's a great cue for any coach out there to use.
Well, think about it too, because when you remember when I teach the deadlift, what my goal is that when you get set up and even throughout the motion, I should stand to the side and hopefully be able to see all three heads of your tricep, lateral, medial, and long. So that means that your arm is fully extended. The other advantage of that is that occasionally you'll have someone who will do a little jerk of the bar coming off the ground.
Yeah.
And it's about the 10,000 rep of doing that they make their bicep tendon very brittle, and they could potentially pull it. And now you got 6-7 weeks off plus the surgery to get that repaired. So you got a nice little tennis ball up here. Yeah. So it has many advantages. In addition, it also keeps your lats engaged strongly, because when you get your triceps engaged, your lats engaged, especially even though you're not pressing the barbell.
Very good.
I want to move back to what we were talking about, the squat, because I did stumble upon your Instagram about you, and I believe it was Mike Boyle talking about the box squat. Can you go a little bit deeper on,
no pun intended,
that whole idea?
Well, so the box squat, has been around for years. Louie Simmons is one who really brought it out. And I understand his concept of doing it, but I'm going to have to disagree with him 100%. I'm also a chiropractic physician. I've been doing that for 30 years. So I'm fixing a lot of people's bodies, including their bad low backs. And the thing is that if Josh has a new grandma come into her gym and she wants to learn how to squat, go ahead and have her touch a chair, have her touch a box as she's learning the motions of squatting again, but she's not weighted. Then take the box away and then have her repeat the same motion, and hopefully she should learn that pattern, that neural pattern, to be able to do that. My concern when you watch Louie's guys, they have 400, 500, 600 pounds on their back. They sit down on a box, and not just sit down and touch it, but they generally lean back a little bit, relax the hip flexors, and then come back forward to do it. So they're they're compressing their lower back. I know that Stu McGill, who's professor emeritus, I think from is it Waterloo University up in Canada, big biomechanics guy. He agrees with me in that aspect as well too. So if you're using it as a teaching method, no problem. Just learn, but just touch it and come back up. Use it as a way to figure out how far I need to go down if you want to use that. If you want to put some weight on your back or in your hands, get off the box and do it without it, because your potential of potentially damaging your L5 S1 disc, your L4 L5. You also got some nerve roots going on down there, which go down to the lower leg. So again, I don't want to mess with that. So I've never have ever done box squats myself. But that's my feeling about it. So,
All right.
and I'm sticking to it.
That very good. Let's go through a little word association. So I'm just gonna go through a couple things. We already covered the you already covered the specialty bars, the trap bars. So we're gonna go through these in sort of like a rapid fire section, and you let me know what your thoughts on it initially. Let's talk about accommodating resistance when it comes to lifting with chains. So,
Okay. I used to use chains all the time with my squat. The one thing idea that is that when you're doing a full squat motion from the eccentric to the concentric, there's points of it where you're weaker and where you're stronger. And the one thing about the chains is that, let's say I'm standing there, I walk out of a squat rack, I got my barbell here in my back, I'm doing some squats. The chains are barely touching the ground. I will go down. As I go down, the chains start to accumulate, which means the weight on the bar gets less. And then as I go up, it gets more. So the stronger parts of the movement, the weight's heavier. The weaker parts, it's lighter. And that's a Louie Simmons thing that he taught me. And so I've been using that for quite a few years. So,
all right. How about accommodating resistance with bands? Your thoughts?
bands, I would use bands mainly for bench press and for deadlift. I would never use it for squat. I did try the squats. It kind of threw me off because you stand back and it kind of moves you around. Whereas, yes, exactly. The chains don't do that. But bands, I would use it for the bench press. I would tie two bands and knot would go underneath my bench. And basically, as the same idea, as I lower the bar to my chest, the weight in my body, but nervous system gets lighter. So it's lightest at my chest. And as I explode up, it gets heavier and heavier.
Okay. Let's go with linear versus non-linear periodization. Any preference for you?
For me, when I was doing my last program I had used to get my squat over 700, I generated a nonlinear program there where basically, you kind of take, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. You just do this nonlinear. And linear means that, let's say, for example, in StrongFirst, the weight every week goes up by 5 or 10 pounds. Now, the sets and reps can decrease, so you may start with sets of 8, sets of 5, sets of 3, but every week the weight keeps going up 10 pounds. And so in that program, let's say you have a 12-week program, 4 weeks to 8s, 4 weeks to 5s, 4 weeks to triples. As the weight goes up, when I go up from, let's say, to my 4th week of 8s, I go up 10 more pounds the next week, but I drop 3 reps. It's in a sense, I have to call it an active deload, because during that time, the weight actually feels less to my body, even though it's actually more on the bar. Okay. So that's linear. Non-linear is where, for example, I would do, let's see, 400 for 4 sets of 5, week 1. Week 2, I would do, say, 15 for 5 sets of 5. Then week 3, I would drop down to 3 sets of triples at, let's say, like 360. And then go back up to 3 sets of 5 at, let's say, 450. So again, the volume, the intensity, everything changes on that.
Cool. What do you think about the world-renowned best booty exercise on the planet, the hip thrust?
The hip thrust, if performed good or well, is okay. And I say okay. I know Brett Contreras. He's a main designer. He has lots of, especially women, doing it for the booty. Unfortunately, I see a lot of issues them doing it. For example, the neck's in a very flexible position like this. They don't use good form. So I have one of my patients who is actually huge into hip thrusting. And so I talked to her about keeping her neck in a neutral position. So she's, because this is a hip motion, not a neck motion. You're not strengthening. It's not a hip slash neck thrust. It's a hip thrust. So make it that. So your neck's part of your spine. So we got to make sure it stays with that. I think doing squats. So they did a study many years ago that they measured at EMG studies as far as the involvement of certain muscles during a back squat. And it was interesting because the deeper someone went below parallel, the more the gluteus maximus got involved. So let's say you did a quarter squat. So your femur bone, your thigh bone gets to this point. So this is vertical. You get down to here. The quadriceps have the most amount of stress. The gluteus maximus very low. When you go down below parallel, the quads still have some involvement, but the gluteus maximus is maximally involved. So if you want to develop your gluteus maximus or your booty, doing deep range squats is good. Obviously, make sure you're not butt winking or doing that kind of stuff with that as well too. So deadlifts are also good for that. So even lunges, step ups on a box or on a bench press are also good for your gluteus too. So there's other exercises besides the wonderful hip thrust that can develop the booty.
Right. It's all about getting into deeper ranges of motion and especially hip flexion when it comes to training the glutes. So I just believe that with the glute, the hip thrust has just been one of those popular exercises that came out of the woodworks, and a lot of people like doing them, and rightfully so. Same thing.
Yeah, no, we have a lot of people from New York City who have different priorities, Doc. So, I want to get the numbers up, but everyone is asking me how do I get my booty bigger. I was like, I don't know. Let's go use a barbell, squat, bench, deadlift, military press, all that. So, we sort of have to accommodate for these clients that we have. So.
Right. I got the next one here. Powerlifting in the Olympics. What are your thoughts on that?
We'll probably never see it. I know the Olympics. So weightlifting is obviously there. They've had to decrease the number of weight classes, and powerlifting has decreased the number of weight classes as well too. I know powerlifting is in the World Games, or it used to be. It's been a number of years since I've been involved with powerlifting, but the World Games was the world competition for events that are not in the Olympics. So powerlifting, what the IWF and the IPF, which is the International Powerlifting International Weightlifting Federation, don't necessarily get along very well. They do have some common things, but I think the IWF already has enough issues of its own in trying to allow another power weightlifting aspect in there. But here's the thing: they just allowed breakdancing. I mean,
Well, it's gone now.
It is a sport. I know it's not now. They took it out. But again, when you watch those movements in breakdancing, they're doing a lot of bodyweight calisthenic stuff. So that's pretty impressive, some of the movements they were doing. So I'm not negating that, but it's not an Olympic sport. If you are to say
it is now.
What'd you say?
I said,
well,
well, it is
it's
now.
gone now.
It was.
Like,
yeah, took it out. Yeah. But again, if weightlifting being an Olympic sport, the powerlifting should be one as well too, because you have different versions of archery, you have different versions. Track and field's got the 100, 200, 400, all different events there. So you have these different things. So I would like to see it Olympics, but I don't think we ever will.
Got it. I would love to ask this question because I always get so confused about what this means, and it's geared versus raw powerlifting. I think, I don't know, just watching all these different videos online and trying to read different articles about what's raw versus what's geared powerlifting. Can you differentiate the two and give us some highlight or insight on that?
So geared powerlifting is where in the back squat, you're wearing a squat suit, which is like a singlet, but it's a very tight singlet. And you'd also wear knee wraps and a powerlifting belt, and usually have wrist wraps on too. Raw, when it first started going, was the fact you wear wrist wraps on your wrists and you wear squat shoes and you had to wear a singlet, but you generally were not wearing anything on your knees. And then they started allowing knee sleeves to be allowed on your knees, kind of like the old knee wraps aspect. Okay. Some raw is where you can use knee wraps, a powerlifting belt, and wrist wraps, but no squat suit. Bench press, you have a bench press shirt, which is it's a polyester one ply shirt, or even multiple ply like Louie Simmons guys would use. and basically it gives a lot of resistance. So literally, you almost have to have 315 or 405 on the bar to get the bar to touch your chest. There's that much resistance on it. So it helps the weak.
Have you had any experience in any of the geared powerlifting, Doc?
Yeah. So I used to use gear when I powerlifted. So
Interesting. All right.
yeah.
Okay. You've coached many places, coaching SFG and SFL. Best place that you visited for teaching?
Teaching. Well, let's see.
Someone.
I've been to Korea twice, been to Australia and South Africa twice. Those are amazing. Um, it's just everywhere I go, I love it. I mean, it's just, I love to travel. I would say the best place I've ever been back when I used to coach the USA bench press team, we went to New Zealand, and that was amazing. I went there with my entire family. My youngest son, who just is going to be 23 in a month, he was 6 weeks old. And we went down to New Zealand as a family trip, did out for about 10 days. And then we went to Hawaii for 5 days and we flew back home. So that was an amazing trip. Lots of airline to travel, but it was an amazing trip. So, but that was before I started with StrongFirst. So
What is your favorite Pavel saying?
no drinking, read your manual.
I'll tell you one, and I never heard it from him, but I heard it from you that said what he said, and it was basically like, it was during certification, and it's basically like, hey guys, your comfort is not of our priority. I don't know if I'm misquoting, but like your comfort is not of our concern. So
So at the very first SFL in Italy, Papa was teaching the front squat, and someone came up saying that his collarbone was sore or whatever else from the bar being on his collarbone in the front squat. And Pablo said, your comfort is not our concern.
I've that's my favorite, and I've used that in my gym. I just want to say that I say it, and now people know that I'm the guy that said that. So there's that.
Well, and when you think about it, even people who are not powerlifters, even lifting barbell or kettlebell, you're gonna have some situations where you're gonna become uncomfortable, whether physical or mental or both or whatever. And so, once you get used to that, for example, when I deadlifted, I used to every so often scrape my shins with the bar because I had like bars that had heavy knurling on them. And so I would be bleeding at the gym. Now, not like blood gushing out. It's just more like an abrasion, like you fall on the pavement with your knee. And I would just watch it. And it would be uncomfortable for a few days, but why cry about it? Because it's just going to eventually, get better. So, and I'm not making fun of Pablo when I talk like that. I'm just trying to mimic his Belarusian accent. So,
Go ahead, Manny.
So
The
what
last, the last question.
best fitness book and non-fitness book. You can't choose the best fitness book, which is the one that you just wrote, which we want you to promote after this question. So aside from the book that you wrote, what is the best fitness book that people should read? And also one of your favorite non-fitness book.
being a CSCS with the NSCA, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist with National Strength and Conditioning, they have a book called The Essentials of Strength and Conditioning. Now, that book is a compilation of a lot of different articles. So when I took my CSCS, that book wasn't around. They generated that book from that, and it's a good book for people who want to take the CSCS, but it's also a good book for those who don't take the CSCS. It's one of the best books out there. There's many books by William Kramer, Stephen Fleck. They've written lots of programming books out there and technique stuff. So I don't have a favorite fitness book outside of my own, but those are some ones that I would recommend to people if they want to do. I think Human Kinetics publishes those. Some other publishers do it too. Non-finished fitness books. I'm actually reading a really good book now called Who, Not How. And it's a book about as far as basically I'm an entrepreneur, I own my own business, about delegating, and not just delegating, but even finding other who's to help you do stuff, which then allows me to do other things even better. So it's a good book. I was reading on the plane last night coming down here. It's a good book. Another of my favorite books, and this is due to Pablo Mosek, the Daily Stoic book. So Ryan Holiday wrote a book called The Daily Stoic. So I'm on my fifth time going through the book. I just read a page every day, and I've been doing it for the last 5 years, and it definitely keeps me grounded. It keeps me more sane, if you want to use that term. But he's got some really good things in there that kind of are saying, "Hey, yeah, let's do this." Other things where he kind of wants to kind of slap you in the face, saying, "Hey, get your butt out, head out of your butt," kind of thing. So
Yeah, I love that book. I'm on my third year of reading that every single
there you
morning.
go.
So the
Cool.
highlights, the whole book at this point is just all highlighted. I need to get a new book and just highlight the whole damn thing again.
So, Doc, you mentioned, and then we'll end off on this. Like, you mentioned that your last powerlifting meet was in 2005, and you had started up with Pavel in '01 or '02, and
Oh,
'06. Oh, okay. So, um, so what would be the best kettlebell supplementary exercise for those that are competing in powerlifting, that are achieving other strength sports, not just powerlifting, but like maybe Olympic weightlifting or strongman? Anything you would recommend?
I would say, as a mobility exercise, the kettlebell armbar is one of the best exercises known to mankind. It's a mobility. It's not a strength thing. It's not something like we run to the bar that night and say, "Yeah, dude, I just did an armbar with 40 kilos, man." So I do the armbar with like 12 or 16 kilos. But it's great for your thoracic spine. It's great for shoulder mobility, which is one of the things that you need if you're going to be a powerlifter, for example, or any kind of athlete. But say be able to get underneath the bar in a back squat, to be able to get a bench press and not worry about tearing a pec or a deltoid or a tricep, that kind of stuff. Exercise, I think, is best for powerlifters, is the kettlebell get up and the kettlebell swing. I didn't start doing kettlebell swings until after I retired from powerlifting, but I was doing swings because after I done powerlifting, I played 10 years of semi-pro football. I was still doing deadlifts, but I was doing some heavy double kettlebell swings. And then one of the observations I noticed was that the top part of my deadlift, which always was my weak link, was suddenly better. I'm like, what happened here? And I'm talking about heavy double 40 kilos, double 48 kilos, kettlebell swings. So the kettlebell swings and as far as the get ups are two of, I think, the best moves for power lifters if you want to add it to your program.
Amazing. Awesome, Doc. This is great. If we're gonna end off pretty soon here, but we have a couple more questions for all of our viewers, all the thousands of viewers
The
that we have on this
millions.
episode. Uh, the millions, my bad, I'm downplaying this podcast. The millions of viewers that we have. What is one piece of advice that you want all of our viewers to take away from all of the years of experience of lifting and also all the years that you've put your face into all these books? What is one piece of advice you can give them?
Plan to work, work to plan. Means you need to basically plan your training aspect, whether it be 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks or whatever, and then work backwards from the end back to the front to see what weight you need to start with and see if that's doable. One other advice too is be consistent with your training. You cannot get strong or fat, like in a track and field, you cannot get faster if you keep missing workouts, because this workout builds on top of this, on top of that. And when you get to here, you've done it because you built on top of that. So just remember to be consistent with your training. Maybe go to a gym one day and you feel like crap. You can't do your training. Well, then go a little bit lighter, decrease your volume, decrease your sets and reps. Okay. The next week, pick back up where you were before. But be consistent about your training. Don't forget to plan the work first and then work to plan. Don't just go into the gym going, I don't know what I'm going to do today. Have an idea before you even walk in the door what you're going to be doing that day.
Like my first sergeant used to say in high school, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
That's
And that
the
second bit,
Congress.
you just got to do the work.
That's right.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Doc, can you, before we close out here, I have one last question before Josh, but can you just promote and talk about your new book that just came out, just so that all our viewers can snag one and take some bits of information from that head of yours?
And if you could let other people know where they can find you, if they need to reach out as well.
The book is called Kettlebell Strength Training Anatomy. It's published by Human Kinetics. It came out a year ago. It's been a widely successful book. It's being utilized by a lot of people. It's already been translated into Spanish, and I've also heard possibly in the Chinese. I'm not sure about that. I'm double checking on that. You can find it on Amazon. It's probably the best place to go. You can also go to humankinetics.com and buy it from the publisher directly. But it's a book. It's a work of art. It took me about 3 years to put it together. I had Pavel Satsline, and he wrote a nice forward for it. So he was a very kind person for doing that. I appreciate that. But yeah, it was definitely a work of art, a work of love. So.
And where can people find him?
And I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, or X as they call it. I'm on Facebook. I also have a company called Advanced Strength and Speed Strategies. That's also on Instagram, and it's also on Facebook. So we publish a lot of our certs and all that stuff I teach at. And I also have a website called advancedstrengthandspeedstrategies.com. So check it out.
Well, thanks a lot for everything. For the listeners out there, Doc's been a huge influence in my training, and one of the people I really look up to. And if you ever get a chance, take a StrongFirst with Doc, or take an SFL. He will be in the area come the first weekend of June, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, don't forget November 2nd in New York, teaching the workshops
and teaching.
So I expect to see you there.
You will see me there. We're gonna grab some steak, and we're gonna order it well done. So.
Oh my god!
I do eat it medium now, and that's due to Fabio.
No way! Wow, that's
yeah. A little bit of pink is okay.
Okay, this is wonderful news. I'm glad to hear that. We can order a medium steak when you get here. We'll take you there. So thanks a lot for the for your time. I think that went really well. And maybe we should do this again. Maybe when you come back, we'll do another round of interviews.
Yeah, maybe sometime after the workshops or something. So
appreciate it, Doc. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you when you get here.
All right.
Ooh, look at the special effects.
Yeah, I was like, what did that happen there?
So.
Oh, it's like the 4th of July. Doc, thanks for your time.
That was
appreciate
great.
it.